I brought my videographer, Mr. Killingsworth, because basically, although I consider myself a revolutionary, I still got to make a living. And I own a business entitled Grassroot News, and one of our, we're a video production company. That's basically all we are, a video production company, and we create fiction and nonfiction. In the area of nonfiction, my client population, my niche in the marketplace, because I picked one of the most competitive fields to be in, which I don't know why I did this. I think it picked me, I didn't pick it. But I chose one of the most competitive fields to be in, and our niche in the marketplace is educational video. So like Claire alluded to, I'm born and raised here in Portland, Oregon, and educated or miseducated by the Portland Public Schools. So let me just start by saying, on behalf of Grassroot News, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to the Women of Color Conference, and especially thank you for giving me an opportunity and a platform to talk about revolutionary math. While you're eating, and I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I'd like to, and I know I'm off mic, thank you. I'd like to show you, only brought revolutionary math as a two-part video. We started in 1998 to deal with the low academic issue related to kids of color in the Portland Public Schools. Our first year, 1998, we made a video entitled Revolutionary Math, All Children Can Learn. I want to show you a clip from it real quick. No cassette, okay. Now I'm the producer, right? I do this for a living.
Would you like me to get
No, I don't know, it might be a glare. We'll see. Real.
70. So warmed up
We
now,
took the multiplication table and made a graph.
Now ain't that great with fractions and decimals waiting at the gate.
Our daily jobs are,
Wanted to show women and people of color how they use math in their day-to-day existence.
Addition, and decimal fractions. There's a lot of fractions involved in your tape measures. Your tape measures, you have 16ths, and generally you have there's 16 sixteenths in 1 inch. And so then when you have like 4 sixteenths is a quarter inch, 8 sixteenths is a half inch, and you do this on a consistent basis, it becomes a natural way of life to be able to read a tape in the trades. I use multiplication, I use division, I use fractions, I use algebra and solving for an unknown, I use addition, subtraction, and I use decimals. And each different piece of equipment, you get different parts and pieces with it, and sometimes they don't have instructions, and you have to map them out and figure out what you want it to do first, and then you have to work backwards. So that's like algebra and solving for an unknown.
Computers and math really go hand in hand. Computers run because of logic and arithmetic, multiplication, addition, subtraction. That's how the computer's memory works. It swaps memory using numbers and different equations. Also use computers with math is to determine how many games you can run on your computer, what kind of programs you can run on your computer. The computer has a definite amount of space on it, so if you want to install a brand new game out there, you have to determine through subtraction how much space is on your computer and subtract how much space that program is.
Our group studied math in the park, at fast food joints, in a car, at kitchen tables, on the front porch, and on the telephone. Revolutionary math. All children can learn.
8 times 2 equals 16. 8 times 3 equals 24. 8 times 4 equals 32. I like carrots in my stew.
This is what we did. We incorporated urban slang to define mathematical terms, such as calling an improper fraction a jacked up fraction. We started Show You Right Math, where students demonstrated knowledge of various mathematical processes to each other during study group and in the classroom. Making Math Real involved community residents as guest speakers who shared how they use math in their occupation. Putting your work in was our most successful component. the multiplication table with a rhyme and original music. By approaching math in a radically new and different way, revolutionary math proves that urban children of color can learn. Furthermore, it proves that our children want to learn. The real test is whether they can take what they've learned in small groups and apply it in the classroom.
You approach these children as if they had a brain. You approach these children as if they had good sense. You didn't presume that because they didn't wear the fanciest clothes around, or because their father's name didn't begin with a doctor and their mama wasn't part of a country club or sorority, it normally results in a successful educational experience for a child.
I came to the classroom once, and I sat in there, and I, was able to see what kind of work was going on. And I also remember tutors coming to the house. I remember actually their personal tutor came to the house. And I recall you coming in, working with her and my niece, Chloe, on a few other projects too, and making sure that they understood what was going on, and which was really actually inspiring, because it lets them know that there's someone else besides parents that have confidence in our children, and they're pushing them to excel.
When you see the first time you got the program, the school was letting me know that Timmy was bringing home A's and B's and doing just great in school. But then when you guys got with her and started to go to the school and find out, my child was way under level. I mean, they just passing her along. They were just sending her on through school. And I appreciate you guys coming and letting me know that, because I'd have been thinking my child was doing fine and she really wasn't. I'm proud of her. I really am. Because that way that made me feel that she actually went up in there, and because she had the extra help, she actually learned it. So I'm really proud of her.
2,500.
Now, I ended on that parents note because that's the issue that many parents face with their children in the Portland Public Schools. The Portland Public Schools will tell you your child is doing fine, doing fantastically. And the reality is they're in the 6th grade doing fantastically with 4th grade work. So that's why, and I hate to be a promoter of Norma Paulus, but I really agree with what she did when she instituted those standards. And it's interesting in the whole arena of social change, because social change is supposed to happen from the bottom up. But because Norma Paulus knew that the teachers union had such control over the educational system here in this state, she knew they had that tight control. And they are a hard group to fight with. You lose. So what she did was create this standard, get it through the legislature, and she created social change from the top down. And that, in a way, I think is pretty revolutionary. So that is one of our videos, Revolutionary Math. Now, I called this Revolutionary Math because this is just basically an educational video production project. I'm not an educator, I'm just a lowly producer. And we raised the math level of young people in our first group 2.5 years in just 6 weeks. Now, this past summer in 1999, the average rate of growth was 23 points in just 5 weeks. Now, that kind of growth I call revolutionary. And again, we're not educators. Our whole expectation is that if you study, you will learn. So we have a group anywhere from 8, our first group where the initial Revolutionary Math was created, we had 8 young people. And we met 4 times a week at Matt Dishman in the hot summer. So you can't say the building's falling down, therefore children can't learn. You can't blame it on the neighborhood. Furthermore, this young man will tell you what we also did that very few people know. We appropriated ghetto slang and incorporated into our math curriculum, such as Show You Right Math. What is that other one I did? I forgot because I've done so many. Jacked up fraction. I'm in the right group now. Yeah, jacked up fraction, and put your work in.
Put your work in, yeah.
Now, sometimes that term is a game or a crime term. When you put your work in, you mean you do your crime. What we did, we took that term and said, put your work in, meaning study math. So that's why we call it Revolutionary Math. It's extremely non-traditional. Now, I don't believe that the unique parts of Revolutionary Math is not so much the gains the young people made in our math group. I think it's unique that we got funding from a social service and community-based organizations. We did not receive any funding from the Portland Public Schools or any other academic or educational institution. Our money came, our main sponsors came, again, from social service and community-based circles. And the reason why is that they would not fund this organization, they would not fund this approach, because they look at a more linear way of teaching, such as, what's the curriculum that we're using? We use the GED math book, because nothing is quite as get down to the level as a GED math book, because they want you to succeed, they want you to pass that GED test. So we didn't get hung up on curriculum. In addition, I stripped the cover off of a 3rd and 4th grade math book and made photocopies so that I would not hurt the feelings of some of these young folks who happen to be a freshman and they don't know fractions, okay? Because no one ever charged them. Not only are you going to learn fractions in this short amount of time, but after you learn fractions, I expect you to learn decimals. I expect you to do divisions afterwards. Because the funny thing about math is all interrelated. And if you don't learn, this is one thing I've learned, if you don't learn one thing, it's difficult for you to go on in math. And folks that have degrees and certifications, they know this too, and we learned this by just doing it. So that we were not hung up on curriculum. Now, I do not believe that revolutionary math would have ever been created in a traditional educational system, especially the Portland Public Schools. I was educated at the Portland Public Schools. I'm sure many of you were educated in the Portland Public Schools, or should I say miseducated or undereducated at the Portland Public Schools. One thing I learned at a traditional educational institution such as the Portland Public Schools, and I don't mean to beat them up, but that's the only thing I know. I'm from there. I work with kids from there. I live in a community where the schools are located. My property tax dollars pay them. So I feel I have every right to talk about them and assess them and evaluate them, okay? At the Portland Public Schools, I believe that they take the joy out of learning. And I've seen too many intelligent young people develop a dislike, a disrespect for learning and for the written word based on the experiences they had at the Portland Public Schools. And I think it's criminal any time that you diminish that desire to learn, because that's something, once you lose it, it's a lot more difficult to get back. Where y'all going? Y'all stay until I'm finished. No, I'm playing.
Mr. Burns for the next show.
Is that true? Bye, y'all. See, now that's revolutionary, right?
We'll be right back.
They'll be right back. They just saying that, y'all. Now, a traditional educational system, such as the Portland Public Schools, educates kids to fail before they even try. And I think this is true from some children who are from low-income communities and certainly children of color. If you look at the test scores for kids of color, not just African American, but Latino kids, you will find that in the Portland Public Schools, they perform, and this is not me talking, this is statistically proven. Children of color in the Portland Public Schools perform 2 or 3 grades behind their white counterparts. And you would think, and they know this, they've known this for years, and it's not just here in Portland. Urban schools across the country have difficulty educating children of color. And the discrepancy is something that I understand from the Department of Education they are starting to talk about. And that's why we created Revolutionary Math too, to prove to educators, to prove to various communities that kids of color can and want to learn. Now, again, I said that the Portland Public Schools have a difficult time teaching kids of color, and all you have to do is look at their test scores. I happen to bring some with me. Now, the problem at Jefferson High School, everybody's up in arms about Jeff, but some of that is not the fault of Jefferson High School. A lot of the blame goes to the middle school, the feeder schools in Jeff, and those middle schools are Whitaker, Tubman, and Ockley Green. Now, I'm going to share with you some of these test scores, and I want to pull your coat to a pattern. Now, at Whitaker, in the 6th grade, 61% of the children, this is last year's test scores, 61% of the children at Whitaker Middle School are not meeting the state benchmark for math. 57% are not meeting the state benchmark for reading. In the 7th grade, it gets higher. 71% are not meeting the benchmark for math. 65% are not meeting the benchmark for reading. By the 8th grade at Whitaker Middle School, which is a feeder school for Jefferson High School, 76% of the 8th graders at Whitaker School have not met the state benchmarks in math. 77% of 8th graders in Whitaker School have not met the state benchmarks for reading. That's Whitaker School. Now let's look at Tubman. I'm only talking about schools in North and Northeast Portland. Predominantly schools of color coming from, it used to be a black community. I don't know what kind of community it is now thanks to gentrification, but this is predominantly the area that revolutionary math draws its kids from. You're right. Tubman Middle School, my daughter went to Tubman, and I had to stay on her like white on rice to make her study, to make her learn. And what we ended up doing was having a classroom at home. You know, I taught her as much as I could, and then as a teenager, she just went crazy, and I don't know what happened. And now she's a young woman, and she's back, and I'm very happy. For Tubman, the scores in math in the 6th grade, 56% of the 6th graders at Harriet Tubman Middle School have not met the benchmarks in math. 49% have not met the state benchmarks in reading. In the 7th grade, 67% have not met the state benchmarks in math. 63% have not met the state benchmarks in reading. By the 8th grade, 74% of the 8th graders at Harriet Tubman Middle School have not met the state benchmarks in math. In reading, 67% have not met the state benchmarks in math. Ockley Green, another middle school, same thing. In the 6th grade, you're at 61% of the population have not met the state benchmarks in math. By the time you're in the 8th grade, 73% have not met the state benchmarks in math at Ockley Green. Same thing with reading. You start out with 65% of the kids at Ockley Green not meeting the state benchmarks in reading, and 73% by the time you finish in the 8th grade have not met the state benchmarks in reading. So the pattern I'd like to highlight, and it's not just me, you got the educational crisis team talking about this, through Ronnie Herndon over at SEI, and other activists talking about this. The pattern is, the longer a child of color, the longer a low-income child stays in the Portland Public Schools, the less they learn. Now I find that criminal. It's about as bad as being shot 41 times and reaching for your wallet.
No, not really.
Well, you're right. But to me it is, and I'm going to get to that when I sum up things. Just bear with me, all right? So, not only are these test scores to the curve, but once our students fall behind in the Portland Public Schools, there is no plan for their academic level to bring them up. There's no plan to bring their academic level up. And I think that's what activists such as Ronnie Herndon and the Educational Crisis Team is talking about. When you have a parent meeting in the school, they don't want to hear about your lesson plan. They don't want to hear about the curriculum you're following. They want to know, is my child at grade level? And if not, what plan is there to bring my child's grade up? That's all they want to know. It's fine that you've attended this conference. It's fine that you're implementing this curriculum, but something is not working. And again, these statistics are from 1999 to 2000 school year. So these are the kids that you're going to run into working in McDonald's and other places, trying to come here and can't meet the standards to even attend a community college. Unless they have some crazy parent or guardian or someone that loves them at home that will make them sit down and go over the basic skills. And that is what they're not learning in the Portland Public Schools. That's why I say that in the Portland Public Schools or other traditional educational institutions, the desire to learn is weeded out of a child because they don't have the basic skills, the foundation to learn other stuff. And as you know, you cannot pass those tests without a foundation in basic skills. It breaks my heart to sometimes work with young folks who are 15, 16 years old, performing at a 4th and 3rd grade level, and that is not uncommon.
That is why we created, among the reasons we created, revolutionary math. Now, the reason why I chose math is that math is so concrete. I'm certainly no genius in math, but math is so concrete, it's either A or B. Whereas in English, and maybe grammar, because my grammar is not the best, there's a little wiggle room. It's sort of a subjective kind of thing. But thank God for Norma Paulus. Again, I hate to give her all these brownie points, but the old girl was right when she created those standards to make all the schools in this state reach to. And now you have the teachers' unions and teachers talking about, oh, these standards are too high. What they're saying is our kids are too dumb to reach them. And I don't believe that. I believe that they may have to change their approach to get to them, okay? They have to recognize that children learn with different types of styles, different learning approaches. They tell you this in schools all the time. When I'm doing a video and I ask a series of questions and I do not get the answer that my client wants me to get, right? I have to change my train of thought, change my questioning to get that answer. And I think the teachers' union is so full of arrogance and hubris that they refuse to change or recognize. They say there's a problem. They say they believe all children can learn, but their behavior doesn't indicate that. They're always so quick to blame the community. They're so quick to blame the parents. Oh, the daddy's in the penitentiary, the mother's on crack. They come from a poor family. That's why Johnny can't read. But I don't agree with that. I do not agree with that. All you have to do is look at the successful program at Albina Head Start. They work with children within those demographics, and they are able to bring those little babies, their levels up, because they believe the kids can learn, and they respect the parents as equals, and not as somebody you look down to, not as somebody that you're providing a social service to. The arrogance of teachers I find baffling, because you don't know what that parent's life has been. And a lot of times those parents have been educated at the Portland Public Schools too. So as Malcolm X said, this is just a case of chickens coming home to roost. You didn't educate their parents well, so it's difficult for them to educate their children. Another thing in the Portland Public Schools, I believe it has to be one of the least nurturing environments for some children. From the time a parent walks into school, I don't know if you had kids in there, but I did. From the time I would walk into the school, I got slapped, backhanded from the school secretary. The attitude was so, I can't say that word, but so crappy toward me, okay, that I did not feel welcome. And I had to knock that door down and make sure that they were educating my child. Now that's just me, because you know I'm aggressive and I was concerned about my daughter's education. But for other parents that may not be as aggressive or may not want to deal with all that nonsense that you experience from the time you first walk in that door. Yes, may I help you? Do you have an appointment? My child goes here. I shouldn't have an appointment to come see it. I'll tell you a funny thing. We were so poor. I used to go to the Portland Public School to eat, right? And I would go in there in the morning with my daughter. This is true. It ain't funny, you know. I used to go in there to eat breakfast with my daughter. Quit laughing, Mr. Killingsworth, my ex-cameraman over here. I used to go in there. I used to go in there to eat breakfast with my daughter. And so forth, I developed a taste for cafeteria food. But I didn't care what they said. I had to eat. I wanted to go in there and eat. But I continued to just go into the schools. But a lot of parents aren't like that. They don't want to go through the okie doke that you have to experience emotionally when you enter a Portland Public Schools. Now, it's ironic that the school system and the people that some of the people that they employ, especially in North and Northeast Portland, they make you feel unwelcome from the moment you enter the school. Ironically, they make the parents feel unwelcome, are the very parents that need to be involved. So maybe they shouldn't be out in front. Maybe there should be a community-based organization or somebody else there to welcome the parents and say, hey, I'm glad you're here. You don't need no appointment. Come on in. This is what little Tamika's doing. This is what little Johnny's doing. This is what little Mario's doing. Come on in. They can't do it. You know why? Because they don't believe the children can learn. Because they know these test scores. They know the results of these test scores. Rather than look at themselves for an answer, they're so easily pointing the finger at the parent, at the community, and not the 3 or 4 fingers pointing back at them. So that is why I am not a proponent of traditional education. Now, at Revolutionary Math, we acknowledge this. In fact, when I finished this Revolutionary Math, the study group, I called the Portland Public Schools. I was happy. I said, oh, I'm talking this now to y'all. I thought that we should have gotten a parade. And it's still not my work. It's really the work of our kids. And I was told from this cat named Andy Clark, who runs the math department, all the math department in the Portland Public Schools, that they've invested $250,000 in this math curriculum. Now, they can't tell you if it works yet, just like summer school. And I left some flyers up there about the Portland Public School summer school in '99, where some of the kids, not only when they pre and post tested them, some of them went backwards from going to the Portland. They'd have been better off playing in the park all summer as opposed to going to the Portland Public Schools. Now, again, it's not me saying this. It's their own report that said this. Andy Clark said, look, we have spent $250,000 on this new math curriculum. We don't know if it works, but you say you have revolutionary math. We didn't spend any money on it. Well, that's fine and dandy. That's very nice. So what we've done in response to that reaction from the Portland Public Schools, we've taken revolutionary math on a national level, and we use it to submit in film festivals and to show other educational institutions. And the only state, I can't believe it, the only state was truly interested in what we're doing here is New York. Because New York has such a large population of kids of color that they thought I had so much vision in doing this kind of video that we have an agent in New Hampshire who's closer there, because I'm just too busy. You know, I'm a producer, not a distributor, and their job is to make sure that New York public school system sees our videos, and they want to see if they can adapt some of the things that we're doing here. And now that is truly revolutionary. They were not afraid of the name, and I named it purposely just so that teachers could be forced to say the word revolutionary. And I like that. Okay. Now, again, I got my money from, I come from a social service bag. I have a square job. As you know, in this country, in this capitalistic system, you need 2 jobs. One job to pay the rent, and another job to have some money so you can live, right? And enjoy yourself and buy all those stuff you want, because we live in a consumer-driven economy. So in my square job, I'm the director of a program called the GIFT Program, Great Influence Female Team. It used to be called Gang Influence Female Team, but our clients felt so uncomfortable with that name, and I could dig it. And we work primarily with young females, that we changed the name, and they agreed to sponsor this video, and that's where we got a lot of our clients from. We also got money, ironically, from the School Attendance Initiative Project, whose job is to keep kids in school. But see, they're hip to the okie doke. They know that the reason why a child, an older child, I'm talking about a child whose parent is not necessarily responsible, completely responsible for sending that child to school. I'm talking about a 5th, 6th, 7th grader who can get to school on their own, and they just don't want to go. They gave me some money to see if this relationship model that we've developed in revolutionary math works. A social service relationship model adapted to an academic improvement, program. And in the traditional, I'm not traditional social service either. And I hate to be radical, but you should have invited me, Claire. Traditional social service providers did not develop revolutionary math for the very same reasons a traditional educational system would not develop revolutionary math. Traditional social service agencies look at the families on their caseload as a series of dysfunction after cases. Is now being used to justify why Johnny, Jamal, Wong, Marie, Mario, Tamika not only cannot read, but they are physically incapable of learning because their brains did not develop due to some dysfunction in their families. Dig it? Now, I'm talking about social service community because I'm in it, sort of, and I hope to always stay on the fringes of that profession. So it's another excuse why our children are not learning, because people don't expect them to learn. But we at Revolutionary in Math, not only do we expect them to learn, we expect them to improve. Now, it's one thing to sit in a classroom and get assessed and score, but it's another thing, in 3 weeks, I expect you pre-tested here. In 3 weeks, you need to be here. And I'm going to hold you accountable for that. In our first Revolutionary Math, We had one child, didn't make any growth. She was in there for 6 weeks. We post-tested her, didn't make any growth. Oh, I was crushed. Oh, I was angry. Oh, I was angry at me. I was wondering, what is it that I didn't do? So you know what we did? We sat down with that child, extended her time for 1 week, and we said, we are going to figure out, you're going to improve academically. And the girl did. Her score came up tremendously because we did not let her slide on that. You are going to have to improve or I look bad. You're going to have to improve or I'm going to be out of the job. I'll never be able to do revolutionary math again, and I wanted to do it again. That's why in our second video, which is more kid related, the kids didn't like all these adults in this video, but I brought it to show you that I thought you would like it, and I'll leave it with you. So, our second video is called Revolutionary Math, the Study Group. It's all kids in it. We did a focus group for young people. They didn't want to use any adults. So I said, cool. And what we did use some of the same principles, such as if you study, you will learn. We pre and post tested them. And this time, instead of using the California Achievement Test, which is what we used for this video, the second video we used the carrot test. Now, it is the carrot test that the Portland Public School uses to determine the RIT scores. And those are the RIT scores that are so behind. In the handouts, they ought to be able to progressively improve a child's education. And that why they can't is beyond me. That's why we ignore them. We just go on about our business. Now, finally, I'm going to try to sum this up and leave a few minutes for questions, because I know you want to see this acting troupe. Finally, I just want to say that you can correlate the personnel hiring in traditional social service and traditional education. Predominantly are white educated females. In the social service arena, white females with master's degrees. Therefore, in my job, I can only go so far because I don't have a master's degree. I don't even have any degree, any BA. But I do have my high school diploma from Portland Community College because I had a baby when I was 15, and at the school I went to, they kicked me out after I had her and made me come here, Sylvania. So I had some history here. But you can only go so far in social service without a degree. You can only go so far in the traditional educational system without a degree. And here in Multnomah County and in Portland, Oregon, is populated primarily by educated white females. Now, some of those individuals believe that they have to do outreach to the community to get people to work with kids who look like them, who are from their community and from their same class system. Because no one knows the trouble you've seen unless you've had your heat cut off, terminated, unless you had your lights terminated, or unless you've had difficulty finding housing. And if you've never experienced that, that's a privilege now in America. That is indeed a privilege. Now, again, I don't mean to sound radical, but we've seen other black social service agencies or social service agencies employed by people of color, and they have done, some of them have done a really, and I'm a cuss here, a really shitty job. There is no reason why the Portland Urban League had to go on year after year after year administering inferior programs to my community. And because of, there's an expectation in Portland that if you are a person of color, then you are less intelligent than the next person. Therefore, in this liberal community, they tolerate that. Oh, you came to work late, ha ha ha. That's okay, because we expect you to do that. You didn't fill out your evaluation forms. Ha, ha, ha. Well, we don't expect you to fill out your evaluation forms because there's that expectation of incompetency. I just think it's a damn shame that the Urban League was allowed to continue for so long with their with the youth service program, having that contract. It was known in the social service community that they were incompetent. It was known in inner Northeast Portland that they came to work late, that they had very poor evaluation, very poor strategies. It was known. It was not a shock. But because they were a black group, a social service agency of color, they were allowed to continue. And that feeds right into this illusion in Portland, Oregon. There's this illusion of integration, this illusion of liberalism, but there's not an integration of wealth, because that's where the real power is in wealth. They talk about gentrification. I talk about this a lot. I do a radio show, too, been doing for 20 years on cable. entitled From the Grassroots, where we agitate for social change with music and commentary. That's throwing that radio voice, right? Been doing that for 20 years. And we talk a lot about the changes in North and Northeast Portland and gentrification. When they throw up a picture of Martin Luther King, when they have in their business diversity is welcome, that's fine. But you can't say that and not have anybody of color work in important positions. You just can't do that. Social service does this a lot. They'll have on there, diversity welcome. We are a diverse organization, and they're all white. They do that a lot here in Portland. So I don't know, I guess it's just the desire to be diverse here that I have a problem with. And because, again, in summary, the Urban League was allowed to continue, it really hurt our neighborhood. It hurt our neighborhood during a time when we needed social service intervention the most. In the 80s and the 90s, we had the rise in youth gangs. We had the rise in crack cocaine addiction. We had the wealth of our community extracted. And let me tell you that it was community-based organizations in Northeast Portland who dealt with some of those social ills. Like, remember when we used to call it the whole stroll in Portland, Oregon, used to be on Williams Avenue before it got that bike lane, all right? That was Vancouver's on the bike lane. It used to be on Williams Avenue, and then it moved to what we call Union, which is now MLK. As long as the vice was centrally located in North and Northeast Portland, it was okay. It was agitation from organizations such as the Black United Front and the American Muslim Mission that start agitating and marching against Walnut Park Theater. It used to be a dirty theater. Walnut Park used to be a nasty theater. Men would come there and masturbate right out in front of MLK, our children walking by. Nobody gave a damn. Because it's just, it's just us, right? It was that kind of agitation. Furthermore, in the 80s, Grassroot News decided to become one of the Urban League's fierce critic because they were not doing their job. And you would expect, traditionally, the National Urban League is an advocacy program. Here in Portland, they were a provider. They delivered direct services to kids. And yet, when we needed the Portland Urban League to be an advocacy, they failed us. Because in 1980, I'll never forget this date, May 19th, 1980, was the only time in my lifetime that I thought all black folks in Portland, Oregon stuck together. And that's something you don't see much. And that was during the Portland Public School boycott organized by the Black United Front. Not only did little black children protest the desegregation burden solely on their shoulders, which is what the boycott was all about, but you had 70% of white children stay home that day too, May 19th, 1980, which was the day prior to Mount St. Helens blowing up. So that was some weird times here, I tell you, weird times. And I got a good memory too, so I remember everything. It was on that day that the Portland Urban League said we do not agree with the boycott. Now you would expect an advocacy group to come out supporting the school boycott and all these other organizations certainly less radical or less color-based than the Urban League, they supported the school boycott, but not the Urban League. So I feel that the Urban League has been used traditionally in this city to counterbalance the radicalism and activism of so-called, radical people. But now they can't even do that because they're so incompetent. They can't even do that. So, and they really hurt our community by being incompetent, and that's our fault. Because I was out there by myself saying the Urban League was not doing their job. And I got kicked off of so many people's radio shows for that stance. But that's cool. So, in summary, let me just say that with these educational scores, if two things could happen in Portland. They continue to happen, and Portland will continue to grow. We'll continue to spend $150,000 to buy a house on Williams and Fremont, okay, which is something we never thought would happen. Because of the activism of other organizations such as the Black United Front and the American Muslim Mission and other organizations to clean up the neighborhood, get the prostitution out, get the dirty bookstores out, get the dirty theaters out. Developers notice this, right? And they begin to buy property in North and Northeast Portland. You used to buy a house for $5,000, 4 or 5 bedroom house for $5,000. Now that same house is $150,000, sometimes $200,000. they took it, developed, and I can't bemoan anyone trying to make an honest living. Developers took advantage of it, and what I hate is that, again, you have old folks who've lived in that neighborhood all their lives having difficulty even paying their taxes, their property taxes. And the city and the counties come up with this tax deferment plan, but the reality is, I'm 65 years old, I'm deferring my property taxes. When I die, my children have to pay that property taxes. They may lose that house anyway, because now the property taxes that used to be $2,000 or $3,000 a year, you aggregate them, they're now $15,000, $16,000. And as you know, when you lose a loved one, that's $10,000 right now, the way, funeral costs are. So it's a catch-22. You defer the taxes, the property taxes on your home, and then when you die and you want to give your children something, they can barely afford to keep it because of deferred property taxes. So developers, again, are benefiting from all the changes and agitation that I think community-based organizations made. If we do not begin, in summary, if we do not begin to deal with this academic discrepancy, and I'm doing my best, if we do not begin to deal with it, one thing will happen, and I see this happening in Portland. You'll have native-born people. Now, none of us are indigenous because they killed the Indians, took the land, right? None of us are indigenous. But you'll have native-born children with these kind of academic scores. The only jobs they can get are service industry jobs. Then you'll have a migration of professional people coming into the city, and they love Portland. The beaches, the mountains, it's pretty, blah, blah, blah. It's temperate climate from whence they came. They will come here, and you'll have a native-born population to serve them. May I get, do you want fries with that? Is that what we're looking at? If we do not, again, begin to address these scores. All the native-born people will be renters. The folks outside the area who didn't live here will be homeowners. I just don't think that's the kind of future we want for our children here in Portland. That's not what I want, and I'm doing what I can to prevent it. So thank you for bearing with me and all my rambling. Is it time for questions?
Two questions from the audience. Is there any questions about the project, about the work in the local area?
That's what I like, no questions. I mean, I did a good job.
Well, on behalf of the Multicultural Center and the Women's Resource Center, we'd like to present you with a gift of appreciation.
Thank you very much.
For coming. Thanks for coming and spending the hour with us.
Huh?
Getting ready to break out now?
Break out. I'll leave in a few minutes. As I hate to do this, but we're making a TV show about this, and I was wondering if I could interview people. Mr. Killingsworth is set up, and where do you want me to interview him at?
Well,
can we have 10 minutes of your time, so we can
what is
interview
the
you
time
guys?
right now? We're okay. We're okay. So for those of you that are here, thank you for coming, and we hope that you will then move with us to the ST 107 Forum for the choreo poem performed by our guests that have been with us all day. Project Network's Drama Queens will be performing a choreo poem by Ntozake Shange entitled For Colored Girls Who've Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. And we'll take a 5-10 minute break and then be in the ST 107 Forum, and that's where we'll conclude our conference. So I hope you can join us. Thanks.
So Laverne, who do you want me to interview? Now, y'all,
My name is Violante Vieira, and I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I'm a colored girl. And the play, I'm the lady in yellow, and I do a bit on where she starts out, I've lost it, touch with reality. And I can really relate to that part because I am a recovering addict. And when I was in my addiction, I had lost touch with reality, and this play is about educating people on the struggles that people go through in their life. And it's really been a big healing experience for me because I'm able to touch on that topic, and the more I touch on it, the more I heal from it. And it's basically what I got out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that so hard? Come on, talent. Come on now. Tell me, you ready, Stan? what does that play, which character do you play, and what does it mean to you when you see any correlation between the women in that play and what's going on in your life?
Yeah, I play the lady in red, and it's a domestic violence piece. I play kind of like two parts there, and it has a lot to do with things that are going on out in the community and how domestic violence is not okay. And so what we're doing is putting out a piece. We're part of a grant, the Kumba grant, where we're acting out pieces because a lot of us have lived our parts. And so we're learning how to get in touch with our feelings and bring those out, and also deliver the message to the people about, different women issues and things that can happen to us in our real lives. I'm also a client recipient at Project Network, and I'm looking forward to doing this around the community.
The whole area of domestic violence, people will say, well, why don't the woman just leave? I'm sure you've heard that before. Why don't you just leave?
Well, a lot of people are stuck, and they've been raised with this, so it comes in a whole lot of things of trauma. What you've been raised to see, and it's just like a snowball type thing that keeps going down. So when we're putting this out here, we're hoping to break the cycle. So that's what that's about. All right.
Come on, lady. Let's get two. Cost me a house. You ready?
They don't need to hear from me.
What character do you play, and what does it mean to you? Do you relate to your character in any way?
Definitely.
Such as?
My name is Kawan, and I'm Lady in Green. And one of my parts that I play in, it talks about losing all your stuff, losing your pride, your self-esteem, and demanding that the world return it to you. Basically, that you're taking a stand. You're going to take back everything that you've lost, and you're not going to give up so easily.
How does that relate to you?
Because I lost it all, being in the life, prostitution, the drugs, and losing my children and all that. I had basically, life was really unmanageable. But now I have a grip on reality, and I know what I want, and I'm just out there getting it all back. So I'm no longer using drugs and alcohol. Have been clean for 5 months. I'm getting my children back, and I'm getting my nursing license back, and I'm just moving on.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What character do you play, and how does it relate to your life?
My name is Rebecca Turner, and I'm the lady in blue. I play no assistance and sorry. No assistance is basically a woman in a relationship or a man and having no assistance from their partner. Sorry consists of just a whole bunch of apologies. Period. A whole bunch of apologies, not following through, not being consistent. Both parts touch me deeply. I can relate to both of them because I have been in relationships that I've had no help with the relationship, violent relationships, abusive, where that a whole bunch of apologies only to do it again. And I'm very, very, very dedicated to the play. It's a experience for me to get in touch with the things that I have went through in the past. It's a healing process every time I do it. It's very therapeutic, and I'm just very, very, very happy to be in the play, to be recognized. I give thanks to Project Network and Laverne Green for all she's done. It's helped me as far as communication with other people. The audience now, I can look out and talk to people and look eye to eye, which I could never do that before I got in the play. So it's really been an experience for me.
What character do you play? Has Claire left yet? Claire! Before you leave, I need to interview. What character do you play, and what does it mean to you?
Well, my name is Deborah Stevenson, and I play Lady in Purple. Mine relates to me because I like to dance, And but for me, all the characters the girl played, I can relate to them. Yeah. So, but mine, I like to dance. There's a lot of dancing in my part.
Okay. How does that relate to your personal life, this character?
I don't know. I guess the dancing and the. I'll just say the dancing in it. You know, a lot of dance. Like that's what I like to do.
Laverne, you don't want to say 2 words?
Yeah, I'll say 2 words.
Right here. Laverne, tell us what do you think this play means to the women that are acting in it, and then to the community that views it?
It's a real blessing that the women have chosen this expression to kind of let go of some of the trauma that they've been in. And for colored girls who've considered suicide and When the Rainbow's Enough, it's a serious piece that details our pain, our struggle, our joys, our reminiscence of being young girls. And it allows them to take responsibility for the pain and to move forward, to say, this happened to me, but I don't have to stay stuck. And in terms of the community gets an opportunity to see the women giving something positive into the community and not standing on the streets selling crack or selling their bodies or smoking crack and being a negative part of the community, but they're giving back in a real way, in a real positive way. And it's touched a lot of lives. We've performed for over 1,000 people in the last 6 weeks. One of the most memorable moments was at VOA Men's Residential when a brother stood up and apologized to the cast for the harm that he'd done to the women in his life. And it was a really powerful moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.